We continue our trip down Heat memory lane with some of the best unheralded players in franchise history as we round up our role player draft on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your everyday podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day, Monday to Friday. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucaneat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more this summer. FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome to part 2 of our all-time favorite Heat players draft. We've each picked our starting 5. Now we're going to move on to the bench and decide whose team is better. I'm going Eddie Jones with my next pick, and he is going to be my starting guard now. 38% three-point shooter during his tenure with the Miami Heat. Was coming off of 2 or 3 All-Star seasons with the Lakers and then Charlotte, and Miami picks him up in 2000, is good right away. Basically, he's 17, 18 points per game for his Miami career. Helps, he's a part of that the deal in the summer of 2005 that kind of retooled the roster around Shaq and Dwyane Wade, but then comes back and plays another season in 2006, 2007. So the year after. So he kind of gets screwed a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because he leaves before the ring, comes back the year after the ring, but just a professional all the time. Always, It just felt like every time the Heat needed a shot, a three-pointer specifically, they gave it to Eddie Jones and it went in. I think his rate was, as a child at least, it seemed to me like 100%. Like the guy never missed threes in the fourth quarter when they needed it. He was awesome. Defensively, he was very good. I'm looking at him now. He was listed at 6'6", 190, which sounds about right. That's kind of how I remember him too.
Yeah, it's kind of
so
slight,
I'm looking at him as sort of that prototypical 3-and-D wing, right? Kentavious Caldwell-Pope before Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for the kids these days, so that they can better understand Eddie Jones. But a better scorer, just a more all-around scorer. Eddie Jones is my guy.
Eddie, I love the Eddie pick because just even his addition to the team, he was supposed to be, again, a guy along with Brian Grant when they were making wide sweeping changes after failing to eliminate the New York Knicks the season before. They were going to bring in Eddie and Brian Grant to complement Hardaway and Zoe. That's what you would look at as like a big four at a point in time when a lot of teams weren't capable of doing that sort of thing. But then, of course, So gets hurt and just kind of all falls apart after that. And Eddie, he just kind of was here, and he was always a guy who was a quiet guy. Never, he was criticized publicly by Shaquille O'Neal when they were to get teammates with the Lakers. Like he was there, and then he was kind of cast off in favor of that Kobe kid, and so he kind of was just lost as another guy. But he was a really solid player in Charlotte. They traded him to Charlotte in order to accommodate Kobe Bryant. And he thrived there, and then Charlotte traded him to Miami for Jamal Mashburn, and he wound up signing and trading here. And it was he was just a part of a really bad era, and that's through no fault of his. He was just never a superstar, but he was always a really good complementary player, which was the role Miami acquired him for. And then he was also part of that 03-04 season where he was kind of, he was starting in favor of that Dwyane Wade kid. So it was just, he was part of a really, bleak era in Heat history, but he was always a really, really good player. So that's kudos to you. But speaking of bleak periods in Heat history, I'm going with my next pick here, somebody that I've talked about before. I'm taking Dion Waiters.
It's a good pick.
This is the all swaggy team. This is the all swag team between Rio and Dion. I can't wait to get that backcourt.
They're going to fight. They're never going to make it out of the locker room.
It's going to be beyond Dion and Kyrie fighting in the Cavs locker room. Like, this is going to be amazing. I don't know which one of them has a bigger ego. I've said it before. My introduction to Dion Waiters was going into a locker room. My first locker room experience was going to an Oklahoma City Thunder locker room. And you've got championship contending team there with Kendrick Perkins, you got Kevin Durant, you got Russell Westbrook, etc. And nobody thinks he's a better player on that roster than Dion Waiters, wearing nothing but a towel and feeling 100% comfortable doing so as he invites media to his locker room so that he can talk about his pretty okay performance against the Orlando Magic. I was like, wow, man, this guy is amazing. He's got it. Whatever it is, this guy's got it in spades. It was amazing just seeing him up close, like that, the ego and the arrogance and the confidence through the roof. Like, I mean, if you're talking elite skill, that was his biggest skill.
It was confidence. Was it?
He hit some big shots in Miami too. Yeah,
he did
some big shots there.
And again, part of that, even post sort of, I know he played a little bit with Dwyane Wade, but like Dwyane Wade leaves in 2016, post Luol Deng, even post that like initial sort of the Chris Bosh, he's gone. It was Dion, it was James Johnson, it was Tyler Johnson, it was that whole group. And if not for me, you would have had 7-Eleven. You would have had the 7-Eleven backcourt, but I spite vetoed you, so you didn't get a chance to put Goran Dragic and Dion Waiters together.
That's unfair.
All right, let's speed it up here a little bit. I'm going to go with my next pick. I'm going Darrell Wright.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
Why?
Darrell Wright, because like he had like 2 okay seasons in Miami. Like he was a much better prototype than anything else. Like as good as the idea of Darrell Wright, and he wound up having an incredibly long career, but in Miami, he was like an afterthought. I haven't even used I almost want to use a veto challenge on your behalf here at this point, but you know what? Keep Darrell Wright. That's good.
So just for me, Dwyane Wade gets drafted 5th in 2003. The very next draft. Now I'm in. I'm all the way in. So now I'm in on everything. Sure. I'm in on the draft. I'm in on free agency. This was my first like NBA draft post Dwyane Wade. My first real NBA draft I cared about was Dwyane Wade, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh draft. But this was where I was like, oh my God, like now I care about who's going in like the end of the first round. So the Heat, because they were so surprisingly good Dwyane Wade's rookie year, end up with the 19th pick in the 2004 draft. And they take Darrell Wright, who was a freshman and enters the NBA at like 19 years old. And he was just one of these guys that always seemed really young. Like he was 25 and it seemed like he'd been in the league for 10 years. And then he got really old all of a sudden. And it was just like, wait, what just happened to Darrell Wright? But was with the Heat forever, it just seemed like. And to your point, it was kind of an afterthought. To me, I was always in on him because he was sort of my first post Dwyane Wade rookie. And I was like, it's going to happen for this guy. It's going to happen for this guy. And then it never really did. He leaves Miami and then immediately the next year goes to Golden State and averages 16 points per game for the 2010-2011 Golden State Warriors and ends up being like a fan favorite in the Bay Area. But I just kind of always liked him. He was always around. I was always keeping tabs on him. This is definitely more of a favorite pick than sort of like a quality pick, but I'm going Darrell Wright here.
And okay. No, I mean, you explained it. Sometimes it's hard to deny.
Totally irrational. It's totally irrational.
Yeah. I'm going with
but for my team, he's like a 6'8", 6'9" wing. He could kind of play some different positions off the bench if I had to try to rationalize it. But go ahead. Sorry.
All right. No, that's all right. I'm taking Caron Butler, 10th overall pick in 2002. Only 2 seasons with Miami, but always a guy that was linked to the team. Obviously, still an assistant coach, always a believer in Heat culture. Part of that great 03-04 run, and then he was traded to the Lakers for Shaquille O'Neal. Had an incredible career. Wound up winning a championship, unfortunately, with the Dallas Mavericks in 2011. Although he was hurt at the time, but had a really, really good all-star level career at one point. And in 2 years here, like I'll never forget the draft. At a point in time when I didn't really obviously care much about the draft. He slid. A guy out of UConn. He had been in trouble with the law, and he's written about this extensively. So he accepts it. This is who he is, and he's fine with it. So, tough juice. And he was a guy who was like, oh, well, is he going to slide? You know, you were worried about character issues. The talent was there, but everybody was worried what kind of a fit he'd be, and he slid. And then at the draft, he breaks down crying when he slides all the way to 10th overall from Miami. And he winds up being a great player in a 2002 season when, obviously Miami wasn't expected to accomplish much, and they didn't. So I always liked his fit. I always liked him as a player and as a person. And now he's part of the team still, which is great. So he's my pick. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, we all love sports. We love them so much we never want them to stop. But right around now, the playoffs are over. You get fewer games in the sports. Well, they're just not sportsing the way you want them to. But over at FanDuel, they let you keep the sports going whenever you want because all you've got to do is open up the app and you can dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers, new ones, old ones, with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. That's FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. We'll be right back.
We have officially selected every player who was part of the Shaquille O'Neal trade. So
can't take Shaq, but take every player that was acquired.
Exactly.
For, yeah.
All right. So real quick, what player do you think we have not selected? Are our listeners the most upset with us for still being on the board? Just give me a name.
Ooh, I can't think of anybody because I think we've hit on a lot of big names there. But I'm trying to think of anybody who they might qualify as a role player. Again, not a player on a current team.
Right.
You know, we've
Can't
taken a lot of good players. Yeah, I took G Money. You know, he was the biggest name, I guess, in terms of accomplishments. I took Ray.
I wonder how many people are upset about us not selecting Hassan Whiteside. I do think that there's a portion of Heat fans that remember the Whiteside years well. Spoiler alert, he's not making any of our rosters. It's not happening.
All right. You didn't follow those teams like we did. Like you watched those blocks and rebounds from afar. You didn't see everything else. So Whiteside's not making my fave team anytime soon. No knock on him. Like there was potential. There was hope, man. Those first 2 years before the contract came in.
Before the contract.
Yeah, everything else. He was just go ahead.
I'm going Jason Capono with my next pick.
This is too on brand. I can't. Again, I'm almost like vetoing him for your sake, but no, keep the Capono pick, man. I get it.
Can I just read some stats here?
Jason Capono. Sure.
First of all, 3-point contest winner, Jason Capono.
Yeah.
So check yourself.
Yeah.
Played
Cook too. I mean,
2 years in Miami. The year he won the 3-point contest, he shot 51.4% all season from 3-point range. The guy made, it doesn't matter. The guy made more than 51% of his threes, 3.1 attempts per game, which was a lot in 2006.
It
that was a lot.
That's all he did.
It was total of
all he did.
More than 200 3-pointers, 210 3-point attempts, made 51% of them. I still don't know how many players in the NBA today could have a year like that, even on a 210 attempt scale versus like 400, which some people are 500 now.
For everybody that hates Cole Swider and his limitations, imagine Cole Swider, but a little pudgier and looking like he just got out of a really, really smoked out van. And that's Jason Capono. Like Jason Capono always looked like he was like, he's like, hey man, like where are we going to next? It's like, we got a game tonight. All right, let's go shoot. You know, that's basically what Capono looked like. And it was fantastic. Yeah.
Southern California guy, checked all the boxes. I loved watching that guy shoot. Another one of those guys where it just never felt like he was gonna miss ever. It was one of those magical seasons. Like really, I think there's a lot of our fans would probably remember Wayne Ellington, the man with the golden arm season, when he shot like 48% from three one year from Miami or something.
He record, right? Yeah.
Right. This was in total like amount of threes he made that season. Capono was the first Wayne Ellington where it was just like, oh, this guy just comes off the bench and just doesn't miss. Guy's just lights out as a shooter. Loved it. Capono's my guy. All right, you're up.
I'm going back a little further. 2006 championship team, 3-and-D guy. I always loved him. Two-tone mouthpiece, James Posey. Give me James Posey. That guy is a gamer. Wound up winning another championship again later on with the Boston Celtics. We don't have to talk about that. I just like James Posey. Again, another one of the next 3-and-D type players. There was Keith Askins. He was the first. There was Bruce Brown after that. And there was James Posey kind of bridging that gap into the next one. Shane Batty would follow in after him. But Posey was such a great player. A guy who kind of fluctuated between starter and sixth man, but he always had a positive impact. I mean, we talked about it when we reviewed the 2006 NBA Finals. Like his minutes just always seemed incredibly impactful, and he was just a hell of a defender, guy willing to take those shots, versatile, lanky, fun to watch, always diving to the floor. James Posey, his time in Miami was brief, but boy, was it fun.
Kind of a coach on the floor kind of guy too, right? Like he just like every coach just seemed that ever coached James Posey just always seemed to love James Posey. So that was part of it. Great pick. If I didn't have Eddie Jones, I would have taken Posey. So
there you go.
It's a very similar kind of player. Wow, we're kind of getting to the end here. I've got 2 more picks left. I'm gonna go with Caleb Martin. I'm going to go with Caleb Martin here, who is no longer a part of the Heat, so he counts.
Oh, veto. Bam. Off the bat. Sorry. Go back deeper. You can't. No, he's come on. His locker room still has his stink in it. Come on. You can't even do that. You can't do that. It's still got his hairspray or whatever. You can't just go ahead and do that.
All right, fine. That's fair. Give me the guy. All right. Give me our friend of the show, Antoine Walker.
Good pick. Good pick.
So here's the thing about Antoine Walker.
Yeah.
I hated Antoine Walker when he was playing for Miami. He was to me the opposite of Eddie Jones. It just felt like every time he shot the ball, it clanked off the back of the rim. It just was that guy missed more shots than he took. He was a volume shooter. Of course, he joins Miami after a long career with Boston, so you didn't like him right off the bat. You kind of already had a bad taste in your mouth. So he joins the Miami Heat as the guy who basically needs to be the secondary scorer. Michael Beasley before Michael Beasley for whoever that matters to. And, you had Dwyane Wade, you had Shaq, but you needed a third scorer, right? Especially when Odom was gone because you traded him for Shaq. And he walks in as that guy. And boy, was he not. But then he kind of was. You check his stats and you're like, all right, he averaged like 15, 17 points per game, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And now in hindsight, like, I think if I were watching Antoine Walker now with my basketball sensibilities, I'd love Antoine Walker. It's like my irrational, like, I love watching Julius Randle play basketball. It's a little bit of the same kind of player. So I'm
super skilled. Like, he never looked like he was in great basketball shape, but always like
small ball, sort of 4-5 kind of guy.
He could play. Yeah, he could play multiple positions. He could put the ball down, a really disarming dribble that was pretty effective at getting the rim. He'd get fouled, and then he'd look over at the camera and give the little shimmy. Like, come on, man! Like that was he should be on my team just for the swagger alone. But yeah, a guy who could shoot the threes. He would always have like an 18-point game, followed by like a 4-point game, followed by a 16-point game, followed by like a 5-point game. Yeah, it's like he could go 5 and 7 or 0 for 9. You never know. Buckle up. It's the Antoine Walker experience.
It was great.
Great pick.
It was great.
Great pick. A lot of fun. I'm also going with a guy who was up and down, but only played very briefly in Miami, but was an all-star in his 1 year here. Anthony Mason. A lot of people don't know who he is. Rest in peace, Anthony Mason. Longtime New York Knick. Then he was playing for the Charlotte Hornets. Then he was playing for the Miami Heat for 1 season. And boy, what a great season he was. Again, another guy who was kind of supposed to come off the bench, kind of backing up Brian Grant, backing up Alonzo Mourning, a guy who could play the 4 or 5, but he had the skills of a guard. He was like 6'7" and 250 pounds. Like, he was huge, built like a Mack truck. But boy, was he skilled with his dribble. He had a nice behind-the-back dribble, had a great, he just really skilled into the basket. And he had this one move, too, where if he was guarding a big man, if they brought that ball down low, that's a turnover because he would just karate chop the hell out of that thing, smack it right out of your hands, and he would force a turnover, and he was able to pick up the ball and institute a fast break opportunity. Always loved watching Mace play, even when he was with the Knicks. And he had a great year here in Miami. So I'm taking Anthony Mason with my 9th pick.
So that means I have one other pick here. All right, talk about brief time in Miami. Give me PJ Tucker.
Nice.
Give me PJ Tucker, man. That guy was Heat culture through and through for his 8-month stint in Miami. But also has been one of my favorite players in the league for a very long time, even before he had gotten to the Heat. So I just love everything about this guy. His story is incredible. Tries to get into the league, can't, has to play overseas, turns himself into one of the original sort of small ball 3-and-D type of power forward center types, even like a little bit after Draymond Green had done it, but was more of a 3-point shooter than Draymond ever was. Just learn. He says, you know what's the one thing I could just get elite at if I just practice it for 2 years? Corner threes. Can't hit an above the break three, but can hit a corner three with the best of them. Led the league in corner 3-point percentage and volume a couple of times in his career. I don't have to really explain much because he was just here, but toughness, rebounding, defense, the whole 9 yards, great locker room presence, is just like your favorite player's favorite player kind of guy. And was one of my favorite interviews, not only when he was at Miami, but when he was with Houston too. When I was living on the West Coast, I would run into him a lot also, and helped me write a dime piece about
shoe collection,
his sneaker collection. Yeah, so and gave me the time when Rockets PR didn't want him to give as a no name beginning journalist. He was like, you know what, man, sit down, we'll talk about my shoe collection. And gave me some great quotes for it. So
you didn't need to really twist his arm when it comes to talking about shoes.
I found the right topic for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't have to. Yeah,
if the only thing that would have gotten him talking. Yeah, forget it. 2-minute conversation at best. Maybe a couple words here and there. You either ask him about which are the favorite pancakes or his shoe collection. Next thing you know, boom, you got half an hour with him. So
I remember somebody asking him in a scrum or something like, you got paid the big contract or something. This is when he was in Miami already. And he stops the reporter in his tracks and he goes, what big contract? Not big enough. And who knew he would opt out and sign a $20 million contract in a few months after that interaction. So always candid, always great. PJ Tucker makes my list. You're up. Last pick.
Good pick. This one's going back a little bit further. And this was a fave pick for me, but then I went back and looked at the numbers as well. And this is a forward center who was acquired alongside Tim Hardaway. He had played very briefly, but all I remember about him was every time he played, boy, did that guy score with ease. And this guy, Chris Gatlin, a lot of people will not remember who he was.
Good pick.
Probably the thing he's known best for is his headband and the fact that he had a huge scar from a childhood accident that almost cost him his life. And so he never took any day for granted. And he just, like, even back then, he was, as Dr. Jack Ramsey would say, he had an unusual body, not fit, very gangly, wide torso, not
like a Boris Diaw build a little bit. Yeah.
Yes. But at the same time, boy, that guy always seemed to find a way to score. Like, he had this weird knuckleball jumper. He always finished around the rim. Sick. He wound up having off the bench for Miami. And this is 1995-96. He averaged almost 16 points per game. That's ridiculous. Like, I mean, you don't get that. And that was after a trade again in limited games, but he was a part of a playoff push with Miami too. Wound up coming back. He parlayed that short stint with Miami into a free agent contract with Dallas. And from there, he was kind of a journeyman, but that's fine. I just remember him being like, his nickname was the Energizer Bunny, and boy, did he live up to it. Every time he was out there providing a spark. So he kind of fills out my big man rotation as a go-to scorer.
So have you been keeping track of your picks?
I have.
All right. So read, give us your starting five and your bench.
Oh, I don't know if I've got it arranged by that, but I just have it in order.
All right, take a minute then. I got mine.
Okay, go for it.
So my starting five is going to be Jason Williams, Eddie Jones, Luol Deng, Lamar Odom, and Udonis Haslem. That's my starting five. Off the bench, I'm going to have Chris Anderson, Darrell Wright, Jason Capono, Antoine Walker, and PJ Tucker. So that's my roster of 10. You're up.
I think I've got Brian Grant, Shane Battier, Mario Chalmers,
Glenn
Rice, and Dion Waiters as my starting crew. So I've got Rio and Dion out there with Ray Allen coming off the bench. Who else do I have? Ray Allen.
Posey.
I've also got Caron Butler, James Posey, Anthony Mason, and Chris Gatlin.
All right. Whose team do you think is better? I don't even know what we're really doing here. You know what? We can let the listeners
more
decide.
Fun to watch, maybe. I don't know. Like, whatever criteria you have, no answer is wrong.
I think you have a lack of size on your team that could potentially be harmful, and I have a lack of ball handling on my team that could be a little difficult to overcome.
It's like the current Miami
these
Heat. We
teams-
got a little bit of everything.
It's just a little bit of everything and strangely not much of anything either. Those are our teams. Let us know in the comments section. Let us know on Twitter, on Instagram, who we should have picked that we overlooked. What's a name that's crazy that's not on either of our lists? Who would have been your starting 5, your bench, your top 10? Let us know. But for now, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on your podcast app.